Welcome to A Geek History of Time,
where we connect nerdery to the real world. I am Damian Harmony. I'm a 40-year-old father of two, whom I'm trying to raise to be as geeky and decent as possible. I am also a Latin teacher, formerly a history teacher. I have a master's degree in women's history and a bachelor's degree in history, and of late I have stopped studying so much history and been much more into the use and abuse of the English and Latin languages.
I am Ed Blaylock. I'm a 43-year-old father of one, very little one, and I'm a 7th grade world history teacher. And my academic background is I have a Bachelor of Arts in history, focusing primarily on Western Europe and East Asia, and really heavily focused on the medieval period in both of those places. And I've been a nerd since since forever. I've been a gamer since the age of 9, thanks to first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
I got into gaming and geekery very early on as well, but the best I can remember was playing Dungeons and Dragons with my dad and being killed off by a bunch of lizard people when I was about 8. We also had a car ride where I got to take a test to figure out my alignment. My mother told me I was chaotic evil, and it broke my heart.
Okay, well, that's news. You've changed.
I have. Well,
I think since then, and I forgot what the next thing we were supposed to do here was.
That's okay. This part we can scrub out.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, books we've been reading.
Oh, yeah.
Ed, what have you been reading lately?
I have mostly been working on still getting through At Home by Bill Bryson, a history of domesticity as we know it in the modern world. How about you?
I have been reading the Saga series. It's a graphic novel.
Oh, yeah.
Called Saga, and it's really quite interesting. My buddy Zach got me into it. I've also been vacillating between that and old-timey. I'm into April of 1963 Marvel Comics, so Fantastic Four and The Amazing Spider-Man.
Nice. Okay, very cool. So right now, we're both involved in a D&D campaign. You're more involved in it than I am at present because
you have a 7-month-old.
Yeah. But in addition to that, right now, my biggest thing, gaming-wise, is another D&D campaign that's only monthly, in which I'm playing a chaotic good elven cavalier, and it's first edition AD&D, so I'm going back to my geek roots. Other than our D&D campaign, what do you got going on right now?
I'm actually just running a game for my son and my daughter.
Okay.
We are currently doing a homebrew mock-up of a 3.5 retread of an AD&D module.
Okay, give me the title.
So, what is it? It's Lair of the Were-Rat King or something to that effect.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's where they're in Silverton. And,
yeah.
And,
nice.
It's fun. They just got down to the 3rd level.
Very cool.
They themselves are at least 4th level, and they're just plowing through goblins, were-rats, and whatnot. My daughter figured out that if she melted down silver coins and dipped her arrows into them, that they would actually hurt were-creatures. So I let her have some license.
Your daughter is somebody to watch because
one way or the other.
Because she's how old? I want everybody to understand this. Your daughter is 6 and she figured that out.
Yeah,
you're raising her right.
Yeah,
fist bump.
Thank you.
Y'all can't see that, but
my son runs into every battle growling like a bear because he's a barbarian aspect of the bear. So he's really living it up, and they're doing a great job of it.
You make us all proud. You make us all proud.
So, what are we doing today? What's today's episode about?
Well, I believe you had something you wanted to talk to me about with it had to do with Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes. So Star Trek Enterprise, actually just called Enterprise, came out in 2001. And it was the final one to be put into syndication after a string of successes. Until just recently. And so I wanted to explore where that occurred in our cultural context, because it turns out it came out on TV literally 2 weeks after 9/11 happened. So I wanted to really the influence of 9/11 on fiction and literature and also on TV and movies has long been fascinating to me. These watershed moments.
Yeah.
I believe they're called flashbulb history.
Yes.
Those have long been of interest to me. So we're going to take a look at some geekery having to do with 9/11. So hope you all stay tuned, and we will see you on the other side. And here we are. Ed, you said you are Star Trek adjacent, right?
Yeah, I grew up watching the original series in syndication, and when the Next Generation came out, I was a fan. But Star Trek, to me, was cool. It was entertaining. But I have a lot of friends who are really, really like passionately driven by Roddenberry's utopianism, and maybe it's just my upbringing. I don't know what. My dad in the background making remarks about a real Navy would never work that way. I don't know what it is that stopped me from becoming a true believer. For Trek.
I think I have an idea actually, because a lot of what attracts me to Star Wars is, I guess how do I want to say. It's what repels me about Star Wars too. In Star Wars, it's a mythology.
Yeah. In
Star Wars, there's a chosen one. There is a religious hierarchy. There are all kinds of things in there. Star Trek is like if somebody took notes on John Lennon's song Imagine. Like it's boring. It's dull. And the other thing is Star Wars, there's drama, there's tension, but there's action. Whereas Star Trek, there's a little bit of drama, there's a little bit of tension, but there's no action. Like all of their solves are always very cerebral, and that's kind of the message. And I think that's one reason that there's such a sharp divide. I happen to enjoy both quite a bit, but I do con more to Star Wars than I do to Star Trek because I think that kind of action is a little bit more emotionally appealing to people. I'm going to talk to you today.
Sense.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you today about Star Trek Enterprise.
Okay. Now, before we get started, the moment you mentioned Star Trek Enterprise,
right,
or just Enterprise,
sure,
because it didn't have the Star Trek
imprimatur
in the title. I had a friend who I've lost touch with a long time ago, but a buddy of mine, back at the time that Enterprise came out, one of the first conversations I had with him, because he was one of these people who was a truly devoted, passionate Trekker. Had read the technical manuals, had memorized,
knows where the one bathroom on the Enterprise is.
That kind of stuff. And he was really not happy with Enterprise because it violated canon at the time. Because the what's the word I'm looking for? The history of ships named Enterprise had been established. There was a canon already established, and all of a sudden they introduced this new Enterprise into the mix that was before the NC 1701 that was after the carrier and all that the historical Enterprise, and they introduced this new ship and this new storyline and all this stuff, and he had a reaction like a theological scholar dealing with a heresy.
So similar to
there's a lot of
Star Wars fans after Episode 8 then.
Yes, actually. Yeah. And in a lot of ways you ruined oh my god.
How dare you require growth.
He didn't say you ruined my childhood, and his issue didn't have quite so much to do with geek entitlement as the guys that were bitching and moaning about Episode 8 or I'm going to say a lot of the people who were bitching about Episode 8.
Guys.
Almost universally, yes. But and it was this very important technical thing to him, and I think I'm going to say that this is one of the reasons that I have remained fandom adjacent to Trek, and this is also part of the reason that I haven't gotten into hardcore Star Wars fandom. At the same time, I lean more in that direction, but I'm not
a canon monkey.
Which is funny because I'm a Catholic, so you'd think canon would be a thing for me.
You've got enough dogma as it is.
In my real life, I've got enough. But the number of my friends, and guys, if you're listening to this because I badgered you to listen to it, understand I love you all. But the level of commitment to that level of canonicity and detail and everything felt stifling to me. And so I want to establish with you.
Okay.
I don't think off the top of my head that's going to be part of what we're talking about here.
Not particularly,
because there was a lot of controversy about that at the time.
No, I'm not really getting into that.
Oh, okay.
What I'm going to be talking about with Enterprise is largely the impact that flashbulb moments have on our fictions, whether we like them or not. I could do an entire 5-part episode on how 9/11 had an impact on the extended universe in Star Wars books, because it was measurable. It was obvious. And maybe we will. Who knows? But this one is what I've titled, How 9/11 Ruined Star Trek's Coolest Concept.
Okay.
And I do think that it was their coolest concept. It was their poorest carried out. Poorestly?
Worst.
Yeah,
Worst poorly.
Worst, yeah, the Latinist in me knows how to do it, but it was very poorly carried out. But it's not entirely the fault of the studio or the writers or the co-creators or what have you. They get some of the blame, but I think culturally, it was just one of those ones where
the moment was such that
the moment passed and things had shifted, and they were already committed to this.
Yeah.
And so they wrote it the wrong way. Actually, this is, I think, one of 2 9/11 episodes I've got, so it clearly figures in heavy for me. But first of all, Enterprise was the 5th iteration of Star Trek, if you don't count the animated series. And you shouldn't. It starts with the original series.
No, man. No, dude. You have to. I'm gonna say this was the 6th, because you gotta count the end.
Okay.
If you're gonna, because if we're gonna start pulling that, then
Okay, this is the 5th live action.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. And the first one was the original series, commonly referred to as TOS.
Yeah.
Then The Next Generation, TNG. Then Deep Space Nine, DS9.
Yeah.
Or as we said in my Spanish class when I was in high school, DS9.
Nice.
Then Voyager, which was just Voyager. And then Enterprise.
Yeah.
Now, between the original series and The Next Generation was 20 years.
Yes.
And there was syndication, there were movies.
Yeah.
Then, between The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, there was an overlap of, I think, 2 seasons.
Yeah, I want to say it was 2 seasons.
You introduced the characters by using the other characters.
Yeah, it was what's referred to as a soft pilot.
Yeah.
I want to say it's referred to, I think the term is a soft pilot. I'll have to look up the trope on TV Tropes. But it's you know that you're going to do a spin-off.
Right.
So you introduce the characters on the original show.
Right, so that we see it.
And then so we see them and get a little familiar with them, and we understand what their whole angle is before you go off and do that. It's a tool that gets used all the time.
Well, and they used it again with Deep Space Nine to Voyager as well.
Yes.
You meet one of the main characters on Voyager on Deep Space Nine. And so you had a lot of that. Enterprise, interestingly, exists in the same universe, but it predates all of them, so there was no way to overlap.
Yeah, it was a major, big time prequel.
Yeah, it's a structural difference. Now, even though it overlaps with Voyager in calendar years, and actually it doesn't technically. Voyager ended in May of 2001, and Enterprise started in September of 2001.
Yeah.
So technically, you didn't have any overlap in scheduling, and you certainly don't have any overlap in terms of in-universe chronology, nor in production. Voyager, like I said, last episode was May of 2001, and Enterprise starts in late September. Now, clearly, the first episode was released in September 26th, 2001. So that's 15 days later. And they'd already had several episodes in the can prior to 9/11. Yeah. I was unable to figure out how many were already in there. So Enterprise, it's the first one of the series that goes back in time. Well, all the episodes go back in time, but it's the first one where the actual setting is before the times of the others.
Yeah.
It comes on the heels of Voyager, which was dwindling in popularity. So what had happened was...
For reasons.
Very good reasons, but reasons nonetheless. What happened was the Next Generation, everybody remembers it much fonder than... I challenge you to go watch the first 3 seasons.
Okay, I'm gonna pick a bone with you on that one. I'm gonna say the challenge should be to watch first season. First season was uneven at best. The first few episodes. The thing is, all of the writers. My take on it is all of the writers were swinging for the fences. Like out the gate. Everybody, because it had been 20 years since Star Trek had been on the small screen. And so all the people that were writing were like, no, man, we got to have the next Sitting on the Edge of Forever. We got to, there's this huge legacy that they got to live up to. And so the writers are swinging hard. And the thing is, when you're swinging that hard, when you connect, you're going to knock the cover off the ball. When you fail to connect, it's a really big, dramatic, ugly fail.
Yeah, you're Reggie Jackson.
Yeah,
you lead the league in strikeouts, but
you also lead the league in
home runs.
And so the first season is because they hadn't gotten their timing down in both in the analogy and literally, like the pacing of the scripts is weird and the timing of the dialogue is strange. It's just it's not, it hasn't gelled yet.
Well, second season you have that problem too because you have some casting changes.
You do.
And then third season you have more casting changes. So you have stuttering and stepping through.
You have stuttering and stepping, but what I'm going to argue and my own take on it was the first season was basically the show survived into season 2 because everybody gave it a chance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very true.
In the second season you actually start seeing the episodes that started to actually look like what TNG was going to be.
You do, but you also still have
seeing,
a lot of production troubles. I mean, the very last episode of season 2 was a flashback episode because they literally ran out of money.
Oh yeah.
So I mean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's struggling, and in terms of popularity, it's a lot like the original series.
Yeah.
In that everybody remembers it fonder than it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily hold up. There are some that really do. You're absolutely right. The aesthetic is quite clearly moving in the right direction. But it's not that popular at all. But then it grew. It grew. Season 3, they started gelling. You still have really awful episodes even into season 5, though. You really do.
Oh yeah,
just a few.
You got a couple of stinkers.
Low points.
Like every season, there's one
or two.
Like, oh God, why did you film this?
Right.
This is a crime against celluloid.
But back then they had to keep 24 episodes.
Yeah.
Every season. They're really working.
Yeah.
This is a sad part. Once Roddenberry died, it got better.
Well, and here's the thing. That is sad. And, Roddenberry deserves an awful lot of credit. But I think, and again, I know there are friends of mine that when and if they hear this, they're going to want to pick a fight with me. But Roddenberry was genuinely a really good human being. I mean, by every kind of measure as far as what he tried to do with
he was a humanist.
His legacy.
Yeah.
He was very much a humanist. And by all accounts, he was a nice guy. Everybody, I haven't heard any negative stories. Yeah, well,
that existed.
But
overall, he was writing morality
more
plays.
Good than bad. Yeah, he was writing these morality plays, and the thing is, that's wonderful. But at the same time, from a storytelling perspective, he had a lot of really strict rules. I mean, the story Bible under Roddenberry was really strict.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that was revolutionary about DS9 was all of a sudden you saw the Federation disagreeing with other people within the Federation. There were protagonists. There were protagonists disagreeing. And it was a huge big deal to Roddenberry as a utopianist, as this, idealistic humanist that, we were going to get to a point somewhere in our collective social evolution where we didn't do that. Right. And on the one hand, there's something wonderful and pure in that kind of vision of humanity moving towards this conflict-free
entertainment.
It doesn't make for compelling entertainment, and I think it's fundamentally unrealistic. Evolutionary biologists have argued. I've read the papers, but I can't reference any of them directly. That in addition to opposable thumbs giving us the ability to use tools, part of our evolution is also the fact that unlike all of the other apes, we were able to make a fist.
Well, they can hammer fist you.
Well, they can, but being able to make a
Right.
closed fist is not something that other apes are capable of doing. And there are evolutionary biologists who will argue, convincingly, to me at least, that is as much a part of our humanity as far as being separate from the other higher primates as some of the other stuff. So I think the idea that we're going to get to a point where we don't argue with each other, I mean, collectively, the idea that we get to a place where nation states or groups of people are able to cooperate is utopian and an ideal we can all shoot for. I don't think we're ever going to get to a place where you and me are never going to have a point of contention.
Right.
I mean, and he wanted so much to be so utopian that one of the biggest complaints that I've heard about him was from the writers that were working for him was like, there was so much stuff that we couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so when he was no longer sitting on top of the structure with that set of rules, it opened up the playground in a way that hadn't existed. Yeah. It allowed for more, like you say, you were talking about there not being action, there not being a lot of drama. It opened up the potential for there being more human drama.
Well, the thing with the Next Generation as well, though, is that it even after he died, they were kind of already married to the structure of the old version as well, in that it's a story about exploration. So every episode can be incredibly modular, and there's not much in the way of character growth or character development because there's no drama, there's no overarching plot, really. I mean, you have plot light by the time you get to the end of to the end of season 7. There's a few things that have happened, but it's all fairly blandly gotten to. And some of the best episodes of TV have come from the Next Generation, but it still was.
It was still
shallow.
Yeah, well, yeah, in a very capsular 1 hour drama kind of art form. It was not serialized really in any meaningful way.
You had the characters going on and on, but it's the continuing adventures of. Yeah. Now, partway through, they decided to introduce a new series. By this point, it was unheard of, because again, the original series only got 3 seasons. This one ends up with 7, and I think by season 5. Maybe 6, you have a new series come out of this. Now, it is a huge ripoff of Babylon 5. That is established fact. But it was still a really cool series. I think Deep Space Nine was probably the best of them all, partly because...
Of all the Trek series.
Of all the Treks, yeah.
Okay.
Because
if you try to argue it was better than Babylon 5,
no.
You're going to have a very un-Roddenberry argument on your hands.
But
I'm a big Bab 5 fan. Huge Bab 5. But anyway, that's
Deep Space Nine. The conceit of Deep Space Nine was that in all of Star Trek, you always have a ship traveling. This was a station, so it didn't move, which means things had to come to it, which means inherently, structurally, you have a difference. And that means you have to have an overarching plot to affect these people who are fairly stationary because they're on a station. It was the first non-Roddenberry series start. They didn't go from morality play to morality play. All the characters developed through their conflict, and they developed together. The plot kept coming to them. And so it's a huge step away from what had previously been done. Now, once TNG ended... DS9 was the only thing. It was the standard bearer.
Star Trek.
And since it was so successful at riding the crests of DS9's or of TNG's popularity, they went ahead and made Voyager. And they're like, okay, well, here we've got the station. Let's have ship take off from it, and you've got the same overlap. But since Deep Space Nine had the whole war going, that really restricts what Voyager can do. The only way to get around that is to just throw them to another quadrant and have them working their way back,
trying to get home.
And that's which is a different thing still, and it's really cool.
By the way, the Odyssey.
Yeah,
just talking about what source you're ripping off.
Oh yeah. So it's a story about trying to come home. It's a story about isolation, severe isolation, also more exploration because as you're working your way back, there were cool plots. But there was also a noticeable shift. The way I've described it was if the Next Generation was bold colors, Voyager was pastels.
Okay.
I've heard it mockingly referred to as, the Next Generation with half the charisma. Which ain't wrong. And some of it's because by this point we're a little saturated as a market, but they do things to spice up the plot, and they examined what makes a human and what makes a being in ways that no other show heretofore had done. Now they shifted characters around, but they largely struggled. I remember B'Elanna Torres. She's the half Klingon.
One of the, if not the legacy character, dating all the way back to TNG. If I remember correctly. No, Torres wasn't in TNG. Sorry, I'm thinking of another half Klingon from TNG. She was a legacy character from DS9.
No,
wasn't it?
You're thinking of Harry.
Oh, okay.
Ensign Harry.
Poor guy.
She was in the beginning a sex object in the show. She was going to be the love interest, you know? And there were scenes shot very early on that obviously put her in that kind of thing. And
male gaze kind of.
I don't know if it was because she's a woman of color. I don't know if it's because she's a Klingon. I don't know if it's because her character was just too angry to get behind, and men didn't like that. But eventually, they came up with 7 of 9. Wearing all the skin-tight jumpsuits that she could.
As a friend of mine named her 6 of 9.
Yeah, there you go. And so she ended up taking kind of that role. So you see them kind of shifting and adjusting, which, to their credit, they were trying to shift and adjust. On the other hand, the next generation, I don't remember them shifting and adjusting all that much.
No.
And Deep Space Nine, they were really good at revving you up and then giving you a silly episode and then revving you back up. But Voyager seems a little bit more a slave to the grind as far as what the fans want. And again, it could be because they're responding to the fact that people are just getting a waning interest. There's other things that are out there by that point. It's the late 90s. And the plots the plots are a bit dodgy. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of becomes a little bit bland, and so they bring in other characters from other series to kind of spike your interest. Now, Enterprise is the next one. At this point, it's expected to continue as the franchise, but by this time, the franchise itself is struggling. So the coattails are not as sturdy, and the plots are even weaker. The first major plot line was this thing called the Temporal Cold War. And it was the idea that people have been temporally messing with the Earth for a long time, essentially turning the Earth into Berlin, while 2 mysterious and more powerful factions were facing off over it. But it's hard to get people interested in a shadowy thing that doesn't directly impact most of the plot. And it just becomes kind of a Mary Sue of like, oh, it was a temporal thing. Oh, got it. Okay. The neat thing, though, is that there's no prime directive.
Yeah,
for a little while, like you see it develop.
Well, and we see the interactions and blunders.
Yes,
that lead to the prime directive.
There's no cohesive plan for exploration.
Yeah, there's no just go do what you're gonna do, figure it out. And one of the more powerful episodes that I remember from Enterprise, which I didn't follow closely. But one of the episodes that affected me a very great deal, I remember, was the security officer winds up developing an attachment to feelings for an alien who is a third gender.
Oh yeah.
Of an alien race that has three sexes. There's what we would consider male, what we would consider female, and then there is a catalyst. Right, sex that is
not a neuter,
not a neuter, omni. But it's and it's necessary for reproduction. And they're a minority. That sex is a minority of the population, and so they're like
handmaids.
Handmaids. Yeah. They're treated like handmaids. And he, the security officer, whose name I'm forgetting right now,
I don't remember any of the names.
Even though it was one of my favorite characters, sure. But he became very attached to this individual. He felt very strongly for this individual, and he encouraged them to try to stand up and change their circumstances, and
right.
you're
Fomented rebellion,
you're a sentient being, you don't deserve to be treated like that. And then the authorities on both sides, the Federation and the alien race that they were dealing with, basically said, we that's not going to happen.
Right.
He got basically told, you're meddling in stuff you don't understand. This isn't our place to be telling them how to do this. Moral relativism, all this stuff.
Right.
And on the other side, it was no. This is your role in society. You're going to do it. Period. Mm-hmm. Look at the couple that you've been attached to and the fact that they've been waiting for this all their lives, and now you're going to selfishly tell them, no, you don't want to do that.
Right.
And it wound up leading to them, the third gender non-human, committing suicide. Right. And that was the tagline. That was like at the end of the episode, he finds out, they. Mm-hmm. I think they continually referred to the character as a she, if I remember right.
Because he was a male and he was interested in her.
Yeah, so
Malcolm Reed, by the way, was his character.
Reed, my favorite character, by the way, out of the whole series. But the series unfortunately was so short-lived and left a relatively small impression on my mind. I can't remember his name. Scott Bakula, of course. I remember Captain Archer because it's Scott Bakula. But
and you always remember the captain.
Yeah, because he's really the only character. Sorry. But and the tagline for that episode was, the knowledge that this individual had been crushed and committed suicide because of this intervention, and it was this is why we have a Prime Directive, even though it sucks.
Right. Exactly. So they get roasted for weak writing, although they have some really good episodes. They do. Now, here's the problem. 9/11 happened, and it had seriously jarred American pop culture. I mean, we went from... I don't know if you remember what the big story was in the summer before 9/11. It was the summer of the shark, because 3 people worldwide had been attacked by sharks and 1 person had been killed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good times, man.
And then it turned
when the world was innocent.
Yeah. And then it turned to terrorists are everywhere. And certainly, as a culture, we shifted as a result. We were previously certain of our place in the world, mostly, and then it went to total fear. I mean, I don't know if you remember what it was like for you, but I remember people were afraid to drive on the freeway. Halloween was damn near banned. It was a time of we'd gotten our noses bloodied and we hadn't been in a fist fight in a long time.
Yeah,
which is weird because overseas we'd had plenty of interactions with Al Qaeda, and I'll probably get into that in a different episode. But we'd also just been through an election that was unlike any other in popular memory. Because and it was frankly problematic for democracy, and we can look back now and go, it was. It was a serious 1-2 punch. We went through a hotly contested election. That's fine. Having elections are fine, but having the results be so doubtful and having there be so much
anger,
suspicion,
simmering anger and suspicion and resentment on both sides, really, even on the
from
winning side, because
this
is back when I was still identifying as a Republican. Even on that side, there was some reflexive anger, kind of floating around.
Republicans had just been through 8 years of Clinton.
Well, I mean, there was that, but I know my own feeling. I was working as a school teacher for the first time, and the amount of anger I was hearing from my Democratic colleagues in the lunchroom, was something that made me angry. Like, okay, look, I understand, but this has been settled now, and can we stop harping on it?
Right.
And I look back on my attitude now, and I'm like, well,
maybe we should have kept harping.
Maybe we should have kept harping on it, and maybe there was a more constructive way to say it rather than can we not harp on it?
Yeah.
Well,
even I think I'm going to call out the Republicans a little bit here too, because one thing we like to do is retread 18 years ago elections. But the Republican Party during its primary had done something way dirtier than it had ever done before. Well, during a primary, than it had ever done before, in recent memory at least, in that you had Karl Rove running George Bush's campaign, and you had John McCain, who had rehabilitated his image and was doing fine until Karl Rove was like, look, we either go dirty or we go home. And Bush looked the other way.
Yeah.
And
so here's the deal. Karl Rove,
yeah.
If there is a revolution, as an Eisenhower Republican, I want Karl Rove up against the wall with a bunch of other people right out the gate.
Yeah. You made it bad.
Yeah.
But, so it's a 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
And so our ability to consume something in entertainment that's similar but different from what we were used to was diminished. Our willingness to give it a chance was severely blunted.
Okay.
In season 2, it's very similar to season 1, honestly. Now, watching them now, they're not really that bad, and that's kind of my point. Is actually it's not bad TV, but if you watch them out of context with the rest of the Star Trek series, that's why they're not that bad. If you watch them in context, then it's problematic. On its own, it's fine. But in the context of the 14 years of Star Trek that had been on TV by that point continuously, it was glaringly troublesome. It just wasn't very creative. It was not very groundbreaking, like a lot of the things that had already been done. And I can't emphasize this enough. 9/11 made us not want to explore anymore as a culture. We hunkered down.
Okay.
So a show about exploration doesn't work. In fact, if you look at the shows that come out after that, it's about having a secret, heroes.
Oh.
It's about being stranded somewhere, lost.
Okay.
It's about torturing the shit out of people, 24, or The Shield, or and it's the age of the anti-hero, you know. But the times where you do have heroes,
or it's about being constantly under siege and having to make morally debatable choices. Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I like that constantly under siege.
Being on the run, under siege,
fighting for your very survival.
Yeah,
that's a through line from BSG to Lost to Heroes to
No, that's a connector I had not consciously spotted,
and
before.
None of us consciously were making it.
Yeah.
It was just that affects our consumerism. So the outside world is very perilous all of a sudden. And it felt very all of a sudden, despite the fact that the coal had happened, despite the fact that Kenya and Tanzania had happened in the 3 years prior, it was perilous now.
Yeah, well, the coal and Kenya and Tanzania were not on American soil.
Exactly.
And they were not, I'm going to say this, they were not the same scale of issue. You know, I mean, there had been, I mean, historically speaking, there's a threshold that you have to meet to get somebody to declare war, to get somebody to truly panic.
Right.
And, you know,
visible.
There had been diplomatic incidents, like prior to World War I. There had been all kinds of diplomatic incidents. There had been, you know, backing and forthing with Japan before December 7th. But it was the scale of the destruction on December 7th and the smoking wreckage. The smoking wreckage that was, you know, that was what made that so psychologically imprinting on the silent generation.
You're absolutely right.
That made, you know, and that's the reason that we refer to things ever since then as our December 7th moment.
Right.
You know.
Now it's our 9/11.
Yeah, now it's our 9/11. Or their 9/11.
Yeah.
You know, because
we only see it in the context of what we had.
Yeah.
So you have a show that's frankly kind of bland, and it releases just a couple of weeks. And also, everybody's wearing the same color. Like, that's another thing we forget. Deep Space Nine, they were wearing the same color, but there were accents of different colors. Voyager, there were different colors overlaying the same color. In the Next Generation, oh my God, it was a color fest. But this one, they're all wearing the same.
Yeah.
Which I get it, it's a prequel, and there's all kinds of arguments for why jumpsuits are much more practical.
Utilitarian.
Yeah, and I agree, but it's bland. The show doesn't do well.
Yeah, visually it's not.
And then they did this thing where they opened themselves up to a letter writing campaign. They asked the consumer, what do you guys want? And this is a problem because the consumers are people who are hurting and scared as a culture. And so they don't want to follow a crew that's going into potentially hurty and scary places. They don't want to follow a crew that's exploring strange new worlds. They don't want that because that shit's now a scary thing. They want to feel safe. So season 3 comes about, and it's pretty clear what the writers are going for. They're aiming at processing 9/11. And I don't know if it was a conscious choice so much as this is what happened, but at least the Americans who were watching the show. Season 2 ends with a race called the Zindi. Yeah. It's actually a coalition of 6 races, 5 of whom actually exist. The 6th one has been killed off. A foreign coalition of races. And just listen to this description, see if it sounds familiar. They're a foreign coalition of races who have been scattered by forces more powerful than they are. They used to fight with each other with ever-shifting alliances, but have united to face this common enemy. Even then, they're not wholly united.
Yeah, okay.
So they attack the Earth. They kill 7 million of us with a giant laser and run off before anybody can do anything.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are praising this shift because, it's more interesting.
It's new.
It's new, and at the same time it's familiar, and it allows us to process stuff, It's like when you're heartbroken and you listen to sad songs.
Yeah.
It kind of leaches it out of you.
Yeah.
Now, the original concept seemed to be that the Earth was nascent in its exploration. A bit daft.
Yeah.
Blundering, and they're the golden retriever whose tail knocks everything off the table.
Yeah.
And it was certainly not the powerhouse that the Earth had become by the time of The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. We were the dumber cousin. The Vulcans were constantly going, "Oh, stop it! You can't." And we're like, "Well, you can't do that,"
Yeah.
And that was what they were aiming at. But now, in order to answer the letters, they shifted, and the writers were living through the aftermath of 9/11. And again, 9/11, it took a long time to remove all that rubble. And that's going on while these writers are coming up with ideas. What are we going through? We tend to write and express whatever we're going through. And so the Zindi's 9/11, the Earth.
Yeah.
Now season 3 picks up looking for these killers, wanting to bring them to justice. Again, this should kind of sound like, March of 2004. That ends up being the through line for most of the other plots to come from here on out. How do we confront our 9/11 through science fiction? Here's the problem with science fiction. Science fiction is always about where you are now, but it's take this thing and draw it out and let's explore aspects of our humanity. This science fiction seemed to be, here's where we are now.
Let's wallow in here we are.
And that was it. Yeah. And it was, so how do we culturally rewrite that so that we feel safer?
How do we win?
Yeah.
How do we write this so that we win?
Yeah. What's our Rambo 3 for this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, ironically, Rambo 3, he's helping the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, and they thank them in the credits.
In the credits.
Yeah. So, or it's our Rambo 2, where he goes back and wins Vietnam for us.
Yeah.
So the entirety of season 3 is about preventing the next attack. Again, I don't know if you remember, but shortly after 9/11, now I was in teacher school at this point, right? So getting my credential on. And it was gross. We were in a social science methods class, and the 9/11 had happened. 3 or 4 of our cohort mates got activated. They were on National Guard.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
So that was rough. And then on top of that, a plane crashed or lost engine over Queens and crashed in Queens, also in New York.
Oh, yeah.
And later on, you get shoe bomb guy and underwear bomb guy and stuff like that. But I remember having a lesson on how do we, because we're learning to be teachers at 9/11, right? How do we? It was January is when I started my credential program of 2002. But how do we contextualize this for the kids? I remember one group got up. A dude, it's just so gross. A dude tied his sweatshirt around his head to make it look kind of turban-esque. They drew a airplane on the board, and he goes up and he races the engine and laughs and sits down. And that was their lesson. I'm like, why?
What the fuck?
Yeah, I didn't go to graduation with these people. It was gross and stupid. It was just, but that's where people were at mentally and emotionally.
Yeah,
it
was. We talked about in one of our tangents in our prior episode, we talked about the characterization of Japanese during World War II. Same kind of thing is what happened.
Oh, absolutely.
Unfortunately, on a wider scale. After 9/11 here, and that was unfortunately the Zeitgeist. That was the dark. The underbelly of our anger and our frustration.
We had a chance to be better.
Yeah,
and we didn't.
We kind of flubbed that one.
Yeah, we did.
The biggest thing I remember, talking about what the atmosphere was like. I was living in Seattle when the attack happened. Another time I can tell the whole story of my memory of that day. But I was living in Seattle, and in October, I traveled down here to visit my best friend from college and my other buddies from college. And I nearly got myself shot by an Air National Guardsman over an argument about whether I could take a bunch of toy soldiers on the airplane with me. Not even kidding, not exaggerating. The guy walked up as I was trying to engage in a lively debate with the TSA agent who wanted me to check a case full of several $100s worth of wargame figures, which I didn't want to do because several $100s worth of wargame figures.
Right.
And this guy was an activated Air National Guardsman up in Seattle who walked up. I feel made a point of showing the stripes on his shoulder, put his hand near, at least in my memory, it's on the handle of his weapon.
He holstered his hand at the
least. And said, do you have a problem, sir?
Wow, it's a good thing you were white.
Yeah, no, it is.
Imagine
it is, and it's a good thing that I wasn't 2 years younger, or I'd have wound up going to jail at the very least.
Yeah, and losing all those toy soldiers. Now,
paranoia.
It gripped
Stupid paranoia.
Very. Yeah, which isn't the first time, and it sadly won't be the last time.
Yeah.
Now, the entirety of season 3 is about preventing another attack. This is happening during 2004, which coincidentally is a campaign year.
Yep.
And so it's about preventing another attack, and Enterprise is just kind of incidentally carrying water for the Bush campaign. Here's where it kills the franchise. This kind of plot line can only last for so long. And most importantly, like I said, sci-fi should challenge modern culture, not reinforce it.
Okay.
So, and a lot like TV, like a lot of TV in 2004, it was reinforcing a culture where a man who got us into a disastrous war that stained our national identity, I would just point out Abu Ghraib, waterboarding, the Patriot Act, he was running for office claiming that he was going to find the real culprit. Hasn't done it yet, and the support that we had for the war, and I'll get into that in another episode, but the support that we had for the war was starting to dwindle. Now, the market is also flooding with other stories like this that are better told, that are not from a sci-fi perspective, that are modern, and we need something closer to home. 24, The Shield, Lost, all the gritty shows. Everything is reflecting this culture of fear, frustration, impotence.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Lost. I will always cape for Lost. The idea that there's a monster in the woods is some scary shit, and it was riveting. Now, I was also watching this show, unfortunately, the summer before the leading up to my wedding, and then my honeymoon, which was going to be in Tahiti. So every episode starts with somebody else's memory of the plane crashing, which is a dumb thing to watch. Oh,
that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Good work,
but it was so riveting.
I can believe it.
Now, nobody really wants that in their sci-fi. They want that in other type stuff, but not in their science fiction. And Star Trek has always, even during the deepest, darkest episodes of Deep Space Nine, it's always been about optimism. It's been about hope, courage, exploration, and none of that's available anymore.
No.
Those aren't cultural touchstones for us at that time, and this season doesn't have much of it in there. Now, so season 3 of Enterprise starts up almost exactly 3 years to the day after 9/11. It starts on September 10th. They still couldn't find the Zindi who were responsible. And the more they looked, the more convoluted it got. This should sound kind of familiar.
Yeah.
There was a sense of menace baked into the show by this point.
Yeah. Pardon.
I would just like to point out that I brought him a water so that, he wouldn't cough.
Yeah, and I partially inhaled it, so that's the reason I'm doing it right now.
So, and we're keeping that in.
Yeah.
So just like us after 9/11, there were other attempts to hurt us by extremists. This is true. You had the shoe bomber, you had the plane blowing up over Queens, like I said. You had the 2 battles of Fallujah. It was a scary time. It was an election year. By the way, the battles in Fallujah, we later find out Blackwater and all kinds of connections to our Secretary of Education. But in Enterprise, they're trying to stop a second attack that they don't know when it could happen. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we were doing. We were going crazy trying to... I remember there was an article I read about them hiring Hollywood writers to come up with possible attack scenarios that they should guard against.
Yeah, well, because they wanted creative people who were going to think outside the box. And from the point of view of anybody who's trying to defend against that kind of stuff, one of the things you do need to worry about in organizations, really of any kind, but especially hierarchical organizations like Department of Homeland Security,
right,
DoD, any military kind of structure is groupthink.
Yeah,
and it's a very rare individual who, in that environment, is able to think laterally.
That's true. That's very true.
Especially at higher ranks where you've been promoted based on your ability to work within the system.
Yeah.
And of course, I will cape for the U.S. military till doomsday because I'm a Navy brat and all that. But, that is a known, even within that culture, that's a known institutional weakness for anybody who's willing to, self-reflect. And so when I remember hearing about that, I remember thinking, well, good. Because they need people who are not susceptible to, we know, people who are going to beg the question. They need people who are going to look at it from completely outside, and so on the one hand, that's a real strength, and I know you're going to have a counterpoint to that because I can see the look on your face.
My argument was exactly the other way. As soon as you're doing that, what you're doing is you're paying people to come up with the more outlandish, the more you'll get listened to. And so you're paying people to do that, and now you're focusing on that instead of...
on crazy pants rather than...
Instead of looking at the data that you have. And by the way, it's not like 9/11 was totally out of the box. There were all kinds of inklings in the intelligence.
There were all kinds of flags. I am going to say this. The idea of the specific nature of what the attack was.
Yeah, fly a plane into a building. I'm okay with... Well, even that. I'm okay with we didn't know the exact particulars of the day and stuff like that, but we knew the players that were involved. They were on lists.
Well,
if we'd listened to the people doing their jobs...
If there had been coordinated effort, yes.
Right.
Yes, because same. But what everybody, the paradigm of what a terror attack looked like, was a very different thing.
No, you're absolutely right.
Before that attack,
it was coal. It was embassies.
Yeah,
it was overseas.
Yeah, well, and it was not. The manner in which a suicide bomber operated was a specific thing. Was a specific paradigm, and the idea of just the sheer... really, honestly, before 9/11, if somebody had said, "Okay, here's what you're going to do," you don't need explosives, you don't need fertilizer, you don't need whatever all else. You just need a jumbo jet.
Right.
The head tilting, like, wait, what?
Right.
Of that,
and don't get me wrong, I think if they'd installed the game Sims in the Pentagon, you could have figured this out too. But
granted.
But I guess my point is that when when you're hiring outside people whose job it is to come up with crazy shit, you should make sure first that you've covered all the sane shit.
All the bases, yeah.
Because they didn't. And they didn't
you're right.
in a major and horrible way.
I totally agree. Yeah, we're in agreement on that, certainly on that point.
So to me, it was a sign of, oh, man, they have no... I mean, you remember they went on TV saying, does anybody know how to speak Arabic? Like, Bob Baer, who had retired shortly before that from the CIA... He remembered walking into a bookstore in Hamburg, and he knew what was going on in there. And he's like, how come I'm not running into other CIA agents in here? How come I'm not, like... Because this is a hotbed for radicalized young men, you know, and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just... The amount of infrastructure we put into figuring this stuff out was criminally low. Yeah. And so, they go for the creatives.
Have you read or seen Charlie Wilson's War?
I have not.
You should.
I will.
Because you talk about, the amount of infrastructure not put into, investigating and being prepared for the attack. The tragedy of that story
is that we armed them.
Is that, well, we armed them, we helped them fight off the Soviets, and then at that point, Charlie Wilson, not President Wilson, for those of you who might get confused, was arguing for, okay, now we need to go in, we need to funnel all the aid we can into the country, we need to build the schools, we need to fix the roads, we need to do all this stuff. And Congress went, no, we stopped the commies, that's all we need to do. You know, whatever, they're dirt farmers, we don't, camel jockeys, we don't need them. And
you took allies and turned them into enemies
through neglect. And it's certainly true that there were elements within the Fedayeen that were never really going to like us.
Right.
But we could have blunted their influence in that society by saying, okay, look, we helped you fight off the Soviets. Now, hubba, money, who do you trust?
Right. We're going to rebuild what you used to have.
We're going to rebuild, we're going to
keep
help
in mind,
you rebuild the country.
It is a rebuild what they used to have.
Yeah, because,
Kabul had
prior
plenty
to...
of education.
Before the Soviet invasion, Afghanistan was...
doing well.
solidly in the rank of second world nations,
right.
And then the Soviets rolled in, and you had the foreign army coming in blowing shit up, and you had the people who were resisting that foreign army a lot of them were the regressive elements who had kind of wanted to tear things down when Kabul had been a relatively modern place. And we just said, all right, well, we gave the Soviets a bloody nose. That's all we needed to do, and walked away. And
you're absolutely right.
And that was the point at which we shot ourselves in the foot.
So in Enterprise, they're trying to stop that second attack, right? And they don't know when it's going to happen. And in this search, the Enterprise itself gets badly attacked by the Xindi.
Yeah.
It's all bad. Like, there's no getting around this, that for the writers, this is still what's going on. Like, it's just about being attacked. It's about being victimized. And in a sci-fi setting, that doesn't work. By this point...
I'd say certainly within the context of anything like Trek, that doesn't work. There are ways you can do that in a sci-fi setting, but that's not the milieu.
Even 1984 has hope at the end. You have to read for it, but it's there.
Right.
It's in the afterword where it talks about that this society did exist, which implies that it no longer.
Okay.
But it's this. I don't think this is science fiction by this point, though. I think it's futuristic chasing and intrigue. Really.
Well, yeah.
It's kind of like how people say that Star Wars is sci-fi. No, it's not. It's fantasy and space. It's space opera. It's space.
Well, yeah. Well.
So I think,
funny thing about that term, Star Trek is space opera too, but it's a different kind. I would say
Star Trek used to be sci-fi, and I think maybe it still is now. But sci-fi is, again, we're going to use a futuristic setting, a scientific setting, and look at aspects of our humanity set forward and just fast forward it. Now, Season 4 pays off a lot of the Xindi timeline, by the way. It spends a lot of time foiling bad plots by extremists. This is 2004, 2005. Mm-hmm. Similar to SWAT Valley, the surge in Iraq. By this point, nearly all the optimism is squeezed out of TV. Friends is gone.
Yeah.
By the way, Friends, which was set in New York and never said a thing about 9/11, Sci-fi is still answering to the dominant culture instead of challenging the dominant culture, and we're still in an endless land war in Asia. We did not pay attention to the Sicilian. So here's my thought.
Or MacArthur.
Yeah, here's my thought experiment. What if 9/11 haven't happened? Then exploration's fine. It would have been continued to be fine. There would be no need for any apocalyptic storylines. Or if it was a planet you visited, and then the next week you're off and exploring another one, because that's not what we're facing in our real lives. You're not facing an apocalyptic tide if there's no 9/11. But since we were scared, that was too scary. We needed, paradoxically, something that tapped into our existence and our very concrete fear of being attacked repeatedly, instead of our fear of the unknown.
Okay.
And the show pays the price. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, a lot of criticism was that it didn't stick to the Star Trek milieu enough. Yeah. That's fair. It didn't go mainstream enough. Okay, that's also fair. So it kind of tried to split the difference. Yeah. It didn't commit either way. Totally valid. But the problem with critiques like that is that they also exist at the same time as the art. They're contemporaneous.
Yeah.
And so they're a product, the criticisms are a product of their times just as much as the art is, and they're not aware of the impact of the zeitgeist and the current culture on the very framing of their questions.
Well, yeah, because they're fish and they don't understand that they're wet.
In water. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hence the shift to answer letter writing.
Yeah.
Now, could Enterprise have worked in a pre-9/11 world? Yeah. But probably not by much, quite honestly. Again, the market was saturated. The idea of prequels was still fairly new. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is 2001, which means Episode 1 from Star Wars has happened. It's between Episodes 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. That's a fairly new concept, was a prequel at that time. Now, think about how weird that is to us now. We're like, oh, it's prequel. What? What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Like,
the very word prequel is still...
Yeah.
Like, God, you're doing that?
Yeah, that's weird.
That's a weird kind of concept. Yeah.
So the idea of a prequel wasn't very widely accepted. It very well could have done what Voyager tried to do, and maybe even done it better, though, I think. Yeah. I think it was a really good way to get closer to who we are and still examine ourselves through futuristic exploration stuff. But there's no way to tell. I mean, that's a wonderful thing about counterfactuals. Yeah. One of the strengths that Voyager had was that it was a Star Trek that we all knew. But its weakness was that it was way too far away from anything that we did know. And we didn't, at that point, we had seen enough strange new worlds and new life and new civilizations. In fact, if you look at the Next Generation, it started going into archaeology more than it did exploring with other people.
Yeah, that's true.
It carried the baggage, Voyager did. It carried baggage for us, and it looked at things differently. But having a brand new to everything ever Enterprise, exploring space for the first time, forging these relationships that we came to understand as a given in the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, that might have made for some pretty compelling TV, like you said, with the Prime Directive stuff. Well,
and you know, the relationship between Terrans, humans, and the Vulcans.
Yeah,
I remember there was an episode where, you know, the Vulcans that we know are this fringe group.
Right.
Of religious extremists, you know.
Right.
Religious, in quotes, extremists, you know, these ascetic logicians. And, you know,
Jedi later.
It come to find out that no, that's that movement becomes mainstream, and that becomes what our Vulcans, again, in quotes.
Well, and we had the same thing that we saw in Deep Space Nine with Klingons.
Yeah, and
where Worf's like, we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
and
we don't want to. Yeah, and then
they
go
actually pay it off in Enterprise.
Yeah, and that stuff is amazing. Yeah, I mean, like as somebody who, you know, found the universe compelling but was not a huge fan, those moments were what made me want to keep tuning in. That was like, okay, well, if you're going to do a prequel, this is what I want to see.
Right.
You know.
And then it just went 9/11.
Yeah.
Well, so if you'd actually switched Enterprise and Voyager, so that Voyager was the last series that we end up seeing, and Voyager's the one that comes out in the post 9/11 world, that may have helped Enterprise quite a bit. But to do that, you have to agree to prequels being a thing before prequels are a thing. So it's just not in our context.
And I think what's interesting talking about this now is, you look at the storylines from DS9 about the war with the Jem'Hadar.
Yes.
That could have been...
Well, and the Jem'Hadar are just a proxy for the Dominion.
Yeah.
Remember?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And that war, the war with the Dominion, the war with the Changelings, there is so much about that would have been, if that had happened 8 years later, however many years it is we're talking about later, that could have been a runaway success because that
even the name sounds Arabic.
Yeah, and it could have done all of those same kind of things that the writers were trying to do in Enterprise, and it would have been truer to what that series was, like as a thing on its own.
Yep.
And the moral, the gray morality of what we saw in DS9 for the first time would have fit in better with the Age of the Anti-Hero, because one of the things that was always kind of weird, when I kind of tuned in and out to Enterprise in the later seasons of it, was that Archer and his crew were still very much in the mold of the traditional. Yes. At the end of the day, it's the power trio on the bridge. Right. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Id, Ego, Super Ego. Yep. And I'm mixing up who the Ego and the Super Ego are, but it's
so did the series.
Yeah, well, yeah, but and it's
you had courage, heart, and mind.
Okay,
that's really what you had. Yeah.
But
not Slytherin.
Yeah, never.
Just all the other three.
And so, but the Archer and his crew were in that same mold of. Yes. At the end of the day, Kirk was right.
Yep.
Even when Kirk was wrong, Kirk was right.
Yep. And
there were a few times where Archer was not right.
Yeah. Where he flubbed.
Yeah. Which shows, some maturity in the development of the franchise.
Well, also,
but he was still
1960s versus 2000s.
Yeah. Granted.
Yeah.
Different times, different standards of what we expect out of heroes, but he was still right.
Yeah.
Even when he flubbed, he's still the good man, capital G, capital M.
Yep.
And the competent man and all that kind of stuff. Yep. And even that guy makes mistakes, but he was still very much the white hat. And, there were still very much the black hats. And the thing is, I think our Zeitgeist had also moved in this direction where we recognized, we weren't really comfortable with it, but Jack Bauer.
Yeah, 24
is not
really pushed.
He's
not a good guy.
He's the guy we're rooting for.
Right.
But there are a lot of times where we're looking at him going, one, you are damaged beyond belief.
Yes.
And two, you're terrifying. Like you are the monster that fights the monsters.
Right.
I don't remember whether it was the beginning of season 2 or season 3, where he calls a guy into the interrogation room. And reads off the rap sheet of this guy that he's got in the interrogation room, and it's this cartoonishly awful list of horrible stuff this guy's done. And you're looking at this going, oh my god, you're going to try to get this guy to help you go after these other bad guys, and he goes through the list of crimes this guy has committed, and then stands up, shoots the guy point blank in the chest, and while his assistant is standing there aghast, horrified, Bauer stands up over the, steaming corpse of the guy he's just shot and said, "You always were afraid to get your hands dirty. Get me a hacksaw."
Wow.
And
that's
figure
on
out,
primetime
that's
TV.
Primetime TV, and what you find out is the whole reason he listed that list of awful cartoonish, oh my god, this guy, the devil looks at this guy like, man, even I have standards.
Right.
The whole reason they did that was to set it up so, no, this is a bad guy, so it's okay.
Right.
When Bauer, murders him.
Violates the Constitution.
Violates the Constitution, violates the law, violates basic humanity, just shoots him in cold blood.
Yep.
In order to cut his head off, to take it with him to gain access to the bigger bad guy, because he's going to show that as, no man, this is a guy you wanted dead. I killed him.
Right.
You trust me now. You're going to deal with me. And it's like,
Man.
Holy crap.
You remember when the British did something like that, but they actually got the widow's permission to use her husband's body to leave it in the water, and they went through all that trouble. They didn't kill him.
They didn't actually kill the guy.
And they asked
They didn't murder the guy. They asked for permission.
It was Britain, the evilest empire. Well,
they're very polite though.
Yeah, well, quite.
You have to give them,
Yeah.
There's a way you do these things.
Yeah. So
you don't just shoot the man, for God's sake.
Right.
You'll ruin tea.
So I still think
but I mean that's the era that we're talking about all this happening in, and I think that one of the things that wound up hurting Enterprise was that they were still, even though they were dealing with all this Zeitgeist baggage. That sounds like a luggage brand. They were still trying to hold to the very Star Trek tradition of the black and white morality.
Yep.
And you can't. It's really, you can tell I was about to say you can't tell those stories with a black and white morality. You can, but it's really hard. And
it's almost like you'd have to be creative to do it.
Yeah.
And
and
when you're answering letters by consumers, you ain't
not
being creative.
You're not utilizing your creativity.
Yeah, you're a cafeteria. You're no longer a chef.
Yeah.
Now, I like what you said about DS9. I hadn't thought about that. I still like DS9 where it was, though.
I do too.
So I would rather have had Voyager be the post 9/11 one, because then Voyager is hopeful and it's about coming home.
Yeah.
And that would have been nice to see on TV. I
think whatever franchise they were creating at the time would have been affected by this, because everything else was.
Absolutely.
I don't think you could have had.
You might not have
those stories. I mean, it's wonderful to think about what geekdom would look like, what our culture would look like if somebody had the ability to tell those kind of stories and make them compelling and get people's eyeballs on the screen for them during that time period. I think if we could have had voices in the media telling us, no, look, this is not the time for us to cower. This is not the time for us to be afraid. This is the time for us to go out and say, no, look, we are pluralistic. We are tolerant. We are brave. We are going to go out. We are going to do this, instead of... And I mean, I was as guilty of this as anybody else is. I mean, we all did curl up, in a ball, and we were afraid. And, that was what happened to our culture.
We blew our chance.
Yeah, and that's history.
I want to piggyback what you said right there, because we have a new... You had Enterprise. Okay. Now you have this new Star Trek series called Discovery. It's the first one that comes out since Enterprise. Okay. It's 2017, last year.
Yeah.
Now, this is another prequel.
Yep.
Now we are flush with prequels. Nostalgia is a lot easier to market now.
Yeah.
It feels better when the world is crumbling around you, to be perfectly honest.
Yes.
It follows a new model, too, though. Streaming has changed all kinds of TV things.
Oh, yeah.
So now it's a shorter season.
Yep.
It was 15 episodes instead of the usual 23, 25 that we saw in the past. And they've been picked up for a second season of 13 episodes. Now, I haven't watched any of it, so we'll see. But at least someone is paying attention consciously to what's going on in the world that we're watching this TV show in. And this might be the first time that's been true since the original series.
Okay.
Because he absolutely was taking on racism.
Oh, yeah.
He was making morality plays of the time that he was in. And from what I hear, that's what's going on here. So here's the executive producer. I'm going to end with this. The executive producer of Discovery, Alex Kurtzman. He says, the defining factor of Roddenberry's vision is the optimistic view of the future. Once you lose that, you lose the essence of what Star Trek is. That being said, Star Trek has always been a mirror to the time it reflected. And the topical question now is, how do you preserve and protect what Starfleet is in the weight of a challenge like war and the things that have to be done in war?
Okay.
So we stand a chance of actually having a better series.
Let's hope.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But so I think Enterprise could have been a fantastic series. I think ultimately
there were things in Enterprise that were fantastic. If you just look at the performances, the acting,
it got better.
The design was new, was something different. I mean, like you said, the color palette was kind of more restricted, but there was a reason for it.
Yeah.
And
you had flawed characters really for the first time that weren't bad guys.
Yeah, flawed characters that weren't bad guys really for the first time. And within the
consciously flawed.
Consciously flawed.
Kirk was psychotic the whole way through. But consciously flawed characters written deliberately with flaws.
I
you absolutely
don't understand what do you mean by that.
So yeah, I think 9/11 ruined what could have been a maybe not the best show for Star Trek, but certainly could have been
a good one.
A good one. Yeah.
So now that we've dissected the events that led to Enterprise not really living up to its potential, what do you think after looking all this up and thinking about it? What is your takeaway from all of it?
A couple things. One, 9/11 ruins everything.
Okay.
Two, and that just seems to be the case. Two, I think we need to be aware of what science fiction is.
Okay.
Before we go slinging that term around too loosely. I think science fiction is a specific genre, just like romantic comedies are a specific genre. Okay. I wouldn't call Twin Peaks a romantic comedy, even though there were some fun parts
come on.
And there was some romance.
I don't know. I might try to argue with you on that.
But
I'd lose, but I might try to argue with you on that.
But yeah, I don't know that Enterprise was science fiction by the time it ended, whereas it was when it started. So,
okay.
Oh. What about you? What'd you find?
In going over all of this, because we were living through it, it had never really occurred to me at the time just the extent to which, like you said, survival became such a massive through line in the popular media that was being created during that time period. We were so busy. I was so busy just watching, the day-to-day headlines about the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan.
Sure.
The war in Iraq coming on, later. But, just looking at those headlines and kind of following along with all of it, and the way that the tone got darker and the color palettes got desaturated and our heroes mostly stopped being heroes and started turning into anti-heroes was something that, I think for most of us happened on a subconscious kind of level. It wasn't something we were aware of at the time. But now, actually going back and looking at it, it's really striking. I think the first time I actually really noticed it was the second season of BSG, which I'm going to talk about in another episode, because it was an anvil being dropped.
Yeah.
In that case, it was, oh, hey, by the way, here's your Acme anvil,
right.
And even in that case, it was something I looked at as like, oh, wow, these guys are really no, they're not afraid to drop this hammer. That's really something.
Funny hammer and anvil.
Where.
Well, and at the time it feels edgy.
Yeah.
Because it's pulling on an anxiety that's kind of part of the operating system.
Yeah.
So it's kind of calling out what you didn't even have a name for. So it seems edgy. So, looking forward, let's kind of look at what's edgy in our current cultural context and see if that's pulling on an anxiety. We're going to be doing that when I talk about horror films.
Oh yeah, and
movies.
when we talk about zombies,
right?
The zombie thing is going to be a big deal.
But I didn't mean to steal your thunder. Was there more?
No, that's basically it. Yeah. I could ramble on about it.
So all that's left now, I guess, is to tell people what we think they should be reading or watching.
Okay.
And also what's coming next.
All right. As far as reading, I'm still working because it's only the next day from the last episode we filmed. I'm still working, or not recorded. I'm still working on getting my way through At Home by Bill Bryson. I highly recommend it. And I also am working on the four-gang translation of Meyer's Manual of Combat, written in 1570. Because I've been away from fencing practice for a very long time, and before I show up, I want to have done my homework. And it's really dry if you're not actually, a fencer. But from a historical perspective, it's a really interesting window into, if you're able to kind of read into the subtext of it, looking into the way the middle class was developing and the beginning of sportification of combat forms and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, if you have the time or are interested in picking up a sword and learning how to use one, I highly recommend it. What do you got going on?
As far as books go, I want to recommend a book by an old friend of mine, actually, called The Moral Disarmament of France, Education, Pacifism, and Patriotism, 1914 to 1940, Studies in the Social and Cultural History of Modern Warfare, by Mona Siegel. And it's essentially about how history teachers tried to never again before never againing was cool.
Oh, wow.
And they basically said, look, if we look at our history the right way, then maybe kids won't want to go and fight. So it was a pretty cool book.
Interesting.
Other than that, I strongly recommend if anybody wants to watch a TV show that discusses what it is to be human, there's one called Being Human, which the American version I think is superior to the British version. It's about a vampire, a werewolf, and a ghost all living together, trying to hold on to the shreds of humanity that they still have. And it's 4 seasons. It's really good. It's really good stuff. All right. Well, we have been Geek History and Time, and for Ed Blaylock, I'm Damian Harmony, and we'll catch you next time.